What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Alien Isolation, continuing our Halloween horror month. And I thought, you know what a game, what a way to continue this Halloween month than to go into Alien Isolation. Look, I don't know if I said this with a Silent Hill video, but I am a very big baby when it comes to horror games. And unlike horror movies, I'll actually play the horror games. Like, I'm willing to try them. I'm willing to be and get scared, but I don't know if I enjoy it. It's kind of like this sick kind of thing with me where I guess I enjoy it, but I also know it's going to happen, and I'm not like a huge fan of it. Horror movies, I just basically don't watch at all besides Scream, right? But horror games, I'm willing to give it a try. Alien Isolation is downright terrifying. I mean, let's just get it out of the way early. You're going to hear me say it, throughout this whole video. This is also just a great game. Let me also say that kind of in the beginning of this. Not that you need to know that, right? But actually, we are celebrating the 10-year anniversary of this game this year. So that's a cool little fact. And I know whenever it's brought up, people want a sequel. I think this game struck people, right? This game did something very, very special. And while it's rough around the edges, I don't think it's a perfect game, and we'll talk about that in this video. I think it's an amazing ride. I think it's a real fun time, and it's, it continues to just be something you don't really get a lot of, right? So, like, to want a sequel, and anytime, like, a rumor of a sequel kind of pops up, I actually have covered those rumors on Podcast Now before, there is a lot of attention, because I do think Alien Isolation stands out. It stood out back in the day. And it continues to stand out. Like, I think when you think of kind of these survival horror type games, Alien Isolation is one of the top ones that's mentioned, right? Like, if you want a little something kind of maybe a little like off course, right? What's a game that doesn't immediately come to mind, but what's one that really is just extremely good? Alien Isolation is like one of the first ones that you think of. It really is. And it really comes down, I would say, to the enemies. They got a little bit of like the IP help there, right? And we'll talk about that. But you have just how they act, how terrifying it is, this cat and mouse type situation. Really, really something special. So let's kind of just jump into it. Honestly, I want to kind of get rid of or get done early in this video the things that didn't impress me all that much, and then we'll get to what really impressed, which is the horror elements to it. Okay, I'll kind of spoil that right now. Again, I don't think I would say this. I don't think anything in this game is actually bad. I think some things are just not as good as others, right? So I would say story and characters is something that's a little bit lacking. I think Ripley as a character in this game is actually pretty darn cool. I was reading like old reviews, of like what people thought of it, because actually you go back, the game only got like high 7s, low 8s. Like, it wasn't universal praise, especially from critics right away. I think people look back on it now and you might think, okay, well, this is like a 9.5 type game. Well, critics originally only gave it like 78, 79, 80. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But something that was talked about back then was kind of the lack of depth and intrigue, to some of these characters and to the storyline. And yeah, again, like, does the game stand out and shine because of those things? No. I think there are interesting twists. I think, because the game goes pretty light on cutscenes, there's a pretty okay amount, like, right away, and then they kind of almost get rid of them entirely, right? Like, characters will die. I mean, they could die off screen. They could also die right in front of you, but not in, like, any kind of super cinematic way, right? They don't stop the game, show you the cutscene, show it happen, and then put you back. And actually, in some ways, I can actually quite respect that, right? Like, not everything has to have that cinematic feel. I think that actually makes the game, again, kind of stand out in a different way. But, there's kind of a risk reward there, right? Because sometimes you don't get the full depth with some of these characters. So, like, a Samuels is an interesting character, or what happens to, like, Taylor is an interesting character. But it doesn't hit you as hard as it could, I think, if you did it in different ways. But, what are you sacrificing, right? You're sacrificing in this way the story and the characters a little bit, and you're making up for it in terms of the raw gameplay, the raw feel of the game. If you swap them, I think you would take away the greatest asset that this game has, right? And again, I think the game is serviceable in a lot of ways. Look, it comes down ultimately a lot of times to do this objective, then do that one. Go this way, then something happens, and you have to find an alternate way around, right? Like, if I could count, I can't actually. I can't count how many times, go this one direction. There was an error, you have to restore power, you have to go through a duct to, you have to find a different way around, whatever it might be. That happens so often. And it extends it. I will say one one actual just flat out weakness, I would say, with the game that I noticed is it's a shorter game. Like, we're not talking about a 15, 20-hour game. Like, this game is maybe, if you rush it, you might get it done in like 8 hours, right? If you're not rushing, it might be like 9, 10, 11, 12. But I do think there are times where the game stretches a bit too long. I don't know. I guess that goes a little bit to pacing, but I would like to just throw it out there and say, like, I actually think the pacing of this game is quite good. Like, there are, I don't want to say cinematic, but also, yeah, there can be some sort of cinematic moments to the game. There can also be moments of like high octane action, right? Lots of explosions that you got to run from point A to point B, or you're actually going to have to fight. Most of the game, you don't have to fight. In fact, I stored up a ton of things a ton of times. Like, I had more, and I was only playing, I think I was playing on the medium difficulty, what they kind of recommended, but you can find a good amount in this game, and if you're not using it all the time, you can build it up, and kind of store it, right? But then there's some moments where you actually have to use it. Okay, we're going to give you like 4 or 5 androids. You're going to have to kill these guys, right? And you're going to have to do it very quickly. So, I think there is actually a pretty okay balance to it. Most of it is like the horror hide and seek, kind of situations where you're just trying to avoid enemies, but they throw things every so often to kind of mix with that pacing, and I do like that. I just think, I don't know if every moment is all that great. I do think you probably could have condensed it by an extra hour or two, maybe an hour or two shorter, but really, in terms of like great weaknesses, like the biggest problems the game has, that is probably it, right? Let's get to what really makes this game special, again, is the horror. Now, like I said, I'm a pretty big baby with it, so for a game like this, and really like Outlast, any games, that are, I guess even PT. See, PT, I stood in that hallway for like half an hour. Like, I didn't turn around, and I just stood there. And I was like, I'm also not going to turn that corner because I don't know what I'm going to see on the other side. That's the kind of like player I am. So excuse the gameplay. I'm going to try to find moments where I'm like actually moving, but that's how I play. So if the alien is like anywhere close to me, chances are I'm standing still too long. And I've actually seen other people play it where there's like a little bit more jump to their step, where they're not willing to sit there for like 10 minutes like I am. And I don't know, is either of them the right way to play? You guys can decide in the comments. But that is where this game truly shines. It has just an atmosphere of fear. And also, because I played this originally when it came out, I didn't play much of it, but I played it. And I didn't remember the kind of split that it has between Alien and everything else, because, the Alien is terrifying, and the Alien, as maybe, people know now 10 years later, so what they did with that in particular is, I think they built, I think they said there's like 75 kind of like learning strategies that the alien has. And as time goes on, the game will actually unlock those things. So it conveys like a false sense, right? That the alien is actually learning how you play. Now, I knew that part going in this time. I knew, I've heard stories that the alien actually like learns how you're playing to kind of like learn how to one-up you. Little did I know, again, like I just learned this now as well, reading into it, it's actually just its AI. When they built the AI for the alien, some things are just locked. So it acts a certain way in the beginning, and then every time that you meet it, it unlocks a new kind of almost strategy, which makes you think that it's learning from you, but really it kind of had those things all along, and it just blocked itself off. Genius. Like, real, I don't know. Maybe I'm like a sucker for those type of like weird stories, but I think that is such a freaking cool detail. And let me tell you, it's not just a cool detail, because if that was a cool thing that they said, but it wasn't implemented well, it wouldn't mean anything, right? It's implemented well. The alien is freaking horrifying. And there were some moments where I thought I was honestly cheated. There was moments where I would walk through something and the alien would just drop directly in front of me and I would die. And I actually got kind of mad, I think 2 different times, where it's like, I don't feel I did anything wrong there. But normally, it just has this, again, like cat and mouse kind of thing where, it might appear kind of right in front of you, and it might take like the air duct, out, and you just got to be careful around that thing, right? Like it'll make strange turns, and it might go like ways that you're not expecting it to go, right? But it's also very sensitive. So while you might be able to have the scanner for other things, you can't get too close to the alien with that scanner, right? It'll hear you and it'll come after you. It's faster, it's more aggressive. It would take more to send it away. Really, fire is the primary way of getting rid of it. I mean, like, it's also just scary. Like the alien design. I'm not even like like horror movies. I'm not a huge fan. But like I've seen at least the first Alien. I mean, the thing is terrifying. And I mean, if you're stuck with it, you could imagine how scared you would be. It's also kind of just like a freaking monster. You think of like Mr. X or Nemesis, in like a Resident Evil. Like, imagine that, but then use, like, this IP kind of thing we have with the alien, and it's just so scary to be around. Like, you can kind of follow it, and I've read, like, that's an okay strategy sometimes, is to follow it, because it won't always turn around. I didn't want to do that, because, like, the tail, like, it just looked scary. Why would I want to follow that thing wherever it went? So that's a huge part to the game, but the way they capture that fear, the way they kind of put you in different situations with it, right? And, noises, I haven't mentioned really the sound yet. Like, any horror game needs good sound, right? Whenever you're kind of being hunted or you're trying to be careful with your own noises and stuff like that, like a game can kind of, make or break depending on the music choices or just the sound in general. And I mean, there's moments where the sound will get you, right? It will be really sharp and it's like, oh man, you'll hear a noise and you'll know it's go time in some way. Honestly, this happened a lot with me with the androids, where I didn't even think they saw me. They would see me, and my first indicator they would see me is the music cue. There is a specific music cue when you're kind of being hunted by them. It's very loud, it's very direct. I don't really know how to describe the music or the sound of it, but you guys know if you've played it, right? It's very scary. And I would hear that sound, and then I would hear them say, "You're not supposed to be here," and my heart would just sink. And I've told my wife that too. It's like, that is also scary. So let me lead into that, right? Because while the alien is scary, there is, there's a part to it where you can't show it too often, right? You can't show the villain when it's this gigantic, kind of lurking monster. You can't do it too often. You have to blend it with something else. So what do they blend it with? Well, sometimes there's humans. Humans are easily the least scary thing about this game, and they actually have some really cool sequences where they could be into a gunfight with you. If you have them kind of shoot at you, the alien will come and just kind of do the work for you. So I love that that's even a thing. But the androids are scary. And they are maybe at times more scary than the alien. There's something about their like metallic body. There's something about their glowing eyes that, I did get startled a few times where they're kind of dead on the ground. They'll grab you and you do like the quick time of, I think you just tap X or whatever and you can like beat them. That got me a few times. Eventually you kind of know like which ones maybe can do that to you, but the alive ones, the ones that are walking around, there's just something about their voice. Again, like the combination of the music turning, right? The music turning, them saying just a simple line like, "You're not supposed to be here," or like when they try to like monitor something, they're like, "Oh, I'm going to go check that out." And then you see them walking towards you with just glowing red eyes. I don't know if there's anything scarier. I don't even think because like when the alien's chasing you, chances are it's going to get you and you're going to die. And that kind of adrenaline rush kind of goes so fast that you don't even really feel it. Maybe I'm just numb at this point. Maybe the game kind of half killed me, but I hope I'm like conveying that right. In a way, the alien's actually not as scary because it happens so much quicker, and there's almost like this sense of like, I lost, right? Let me just reset. Let me try to take a different route and go around the alien this time, right? Let me figure it out. With the android, it's like this impending, sense of doom where like it's not there yet. You hear them and you see them and they walk very directly, but kind of slow, but like they're going to make it to their target, which is you. And any time that you do anything in this game, when you're going on like the map and stuff, I think pauses it, but when you're switching weapons, when you're doing that, you don't pause the game. So if you run out of revolver ammo and you're trying to switch to something else, the android is still coming towards you, right? So there's just something terrifying about the sound, the noise, or the dialogue kind of choice that they make it say, as well as just like the look of it overall and like the impending, like, oh, it's coming for you, right? There's something very magically, scary about that is where I got scared so often in this game. That's where I took my time the most, where it's like, I don't want them to see me ever. You know, if I could go through this entire game being unseen by by all of these things, not just one, I will be very happy. So I don't know. It's just that is something that this game really nails. And that, you know, again, in terms of the pacing, there's some moments I think you can kind of condense, but the way they kind of hand it off, where it's like you're not focused so much on the alien, but that doesn't make it a weaker part of the game. So I really think you actually could have a pitfall in that way, where if the alien's not on screen, if you're not being hunted by it, then the game is weaker because of it. Actually, it's not. It does a really good job of blending it and saying it's just a different challenge, because these guys you can face off against. You don't really want to all the time, especially on the higher difficulties. You don't want to just run through the whole thing and get all of them. But on the other hand, you know, again, it's kind of just my play style. Like I saw somebody playing this game where running was a thing that they did often, and you can if you know where you're going, you can run away, and you know they'll say they're hunting you, and then they'll just kind of call off their attack because you've gone too far. You know, if you kind of rush it, you can get away with all that stuff, and it's not so scary. But to me, you kind of, I don't know, you play games the way you want to play games, right? Like, I'm not here to demand people play it a certain way, but like rushing a game like this, I feel like takes away from it, right? It's just that simple fact of like, if you run so far, they'll go on the hunt and then they'll pull off. That kind of defeats the point. Like, you're kind of supposed to be in it the entire time, and then they'll let up a little, right, with some conversational thing or some story thing. Then they'll put you back, and it's this back and forth, because you can't be under that distress like the whole time, right? But when you're in it, you're supposed to be in it. You're supposed to feel like, I really don't want to get caught, and if I do get caught, it's going to be very hard to kind of get out of it. And also, these enemies, not just the alien, all of them, they're pretty relentless. Like, this is not one of those games where you turn a corner, you hide in a closet, and you're good. Like, the enemy's just so dumb that they won't be able to notice that because you turned a corner, the only place you can hide is there. You're not actually there, right? And most enemies will fall for that in most games. Not in this game. I mean, especially like the alien. Like, that alien will hunt you down. But even like the androids, like, I hid multiple different places against like the same ones, and they found me. Oh, and I would run away. They'd find me. I would run, hide somewhere else. They would find me again. It's like these suckers are really good at hide and seek. They must have played a lot growing up. It's just that type of game. You know, I can really respect it. So, I mean, that's the core of it, right? I think it feels good. You know, it's got the survival horror thing where you're limited of jumping and running and things like that. You have limited resources. I mean, like, it is by the books in certain ways, and it follows trends in certain ways, but, you know, because of the alien, again, because I think of the really smart AI and just the way you feel hunted, unlike ways you feel hunted in other games. And that's the thing. Like, I don't know. Like, it's been a while since I played like an Outlast or things like that, but I feel like this game is just very, very unique. Not even necessarily because of the property, but kind of. I mean, that's part of it. But then also like everything that they did with the property of Alien, right? They really made it a original survival horror game, and again, a game that I think left a mark on a lot of people, hence why whenever you bring it up, people want a sequel, because you don't get those types of really good games all that often, and we got one, and we're still celebrating it 10 years later. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.